Welcome back to Dazzy Cars. Tonight, we're stepping into a world where luxury isn't just a concept, it's a lifestyle, a philosophy, a statement carved into metal, leather, and engineering brilliance. And there's no better example of that idea than the Range Rover HSE, especially those iconic generations from the 1990s all the way through 2010, the era that shaped the luxury SUV world into what we know today. This is the machine that redefined elegance on wheels, the SUV that made Americans say, yeah, that's the one. The HSE wasn't just a vehicle. It was currency. It was status. It was the car that pulled up and made people think the owner had their entire life under control even if they didn't. But it's also a vehicle with a soul, with quirks, with character, with the kind of charm that new cars with digital screens and perfect reliability can't replicate. Tonight, we're diving deep into why the Range Rover HSE from this era continues to be the king of American luxury cool. Now let's talk about the exterior, because the first thing the HSE from the 90 seconds to 2010 does is announce itself without saying a word. The shape is unmistakable, boxy, confident, upright, with that British aristocratic backbone that carries into the American streets like it owns the block. The front end doesn't scream, it commands. The squared headlights on the early P38 generation had that vintage charm, like a luxury SUV wearing a tuxedo from the 90s that somehow still looks perfect today. And as the years rolled into the L322 generation, the design matured into something bigger, more sculpted, more refined. The grille became more assertive, the body lines grew sharper, the stance became more muscular without losing the calm, collected elegance that defines a Range Rover. Even today, seeing a clean 2003 or 2008 HSE rolling down a US highway, it's different, it's timeless in a way only a few vehicles ever managed to be. The black pillars with the floating roof design, the short front overhang, the tall windows, the signature British squareness. Everything about this SUV was built to make a presence. Not flashy, not loud, just confident, just unmistakable. You don't mistake a Range Rover HSE for anything else, even at night, even from far away. Moving inside, the interior feels like walking into a quiet private lounge designed by people who understand that true luxury is more about feel than flash. Even the 1990s models had that warm leather smell, those thick seats, that upright driving position that makes you feel like the road belongs to you. And then the early 2000s and 2010 era interiors. Man, that was a golden age. Thick leather, real wood, heavy buttons that clicked with purpose, door panels that felt carved instead of assembled, and a cabin wrapped in materials that felt built to sit in penthouses, not garages. When you sit in an HSE, especially the L322 generation, you feel like you're entering a world away from noise, stress, and chaos. The isolation is unbelievable, the doors close with a bank vault thud, the seats feel like luxury recliners disguised as automotive seating, and the view out the massive windshield gives you the kind of confidence only a Range Rover can. The steering wheel is thick, the analog gauges are elegantly simple, and the technology, while old school by modern standards, still feels premium in its own way. You get that classy navigation screen, the iconic dual-zone climate controls with the blocky buttons, the heated seats for all passengers, and that unmistakable British warmth. It's not trying to be a spaceship, it's trying to be a sanctuary. And it succeeds, but a Range Rover isn't just about looks and comfort, it's about feel. And the engine performance of the HSE in this era created a reputation Americans still talk about today. Whether you go back to the 4.6-litre V8 from the late 1990s or the BMW-sourced 4.4-litre V8 from the early 2000s or the Jaguar-derived 5.0-litre V8 closer to 2010, these SUVs were built to glide. Smooth torque, a deep rumble, a lazy elegance that made them feel like rolling royalty. It's not a sports SUV. It's not trying to pin you back in your seat. What it does is more impressive. It makes 6,000 pounds of luxury move with the grace of a full-size sedan. The steering has that classic Range Rover lightness, the air suspension lifts and lowers like a magic trick, and the overall feel is unmistakably regal. Drive one on a smooth highway and you understand immediately why celebrities, CEOs, diplomats, and anyone who wanted to feel like a king or queen picked the HSE. There's a sense of calm in the way it accelerates. There's confidence in the way it turns. And the handling, while not aggressive, feels planted, safe, and steady, almost like the SUV is telling you, relax, I've got this. And speaking of safety, Range Rovers from this era were ahead of their time. Airbags everywhere, reinforced frames, powerful brakes, stability systems, traction controls, and that full-time four-wheel drive system that gave you grip even when you didn't think you needed it. Whether it was rain-soaked highways, snowy mountain roads in Colorado, muddy back roads in rural Tennessee, or the sandy outskirts of Arizona, the HSE was always prepared. And yes, the reliability jokes exist. People know it. Memes were built on it. But the truth is more nuanced. These SUVs were packed with tech, ahead of their time, and required the kind of maintenance that matched their price point. When cared for properly, they delivered safety, comfort, and confidence that very few SUVs of the time could match. And speaking of price, these machines were not cheap. In the 1990s, they were already luxury territory, and by the 2000s and beyond, they were pulling in prices that rivaled luxury sedans. The HSE wasn't meant to be affordable. It was meant to be elite, and it succeeded. But here's the thing about the Range Rover HSE that people in America truly connected with. It wasn't just a luxury machine. It was emotional. When you see a clean 2006 HSE today, rolling by in black paint with chrome accents and that tall, upright posture, it hits you with nostalgia. You remember seeing celebrities in these. You remember rap videos featuring these. You remember family road trips. You remember wanting one when you were younger, because this SUV didn't just represent money, it represented class. It represented, I've made it and I'm doing it with taste. The HSE wasn't the SUV for people who wanted to brag. It was the SUV for people who wanted to walk into a room quietly and still have everyone know who they were. And that emotional connection is exactly why the Range Rover HSE from 1990 to 2010 is still so loved today. This SUV wasn't digital, it wasn't synthetic, and it wasn't soulless. It was metal, leather, craftsmanship, and character. It was flawed in the way all great things are flawed, but it was unforgettable. Now, imagine the final scene. You're driving an early 2000s HSE at sunset, the sky glowing orange through the massive windows. The road is empty, the V8 hums softly, the cabin feels warm and welcoming, and the world outside feels smaller, quieter. There's something special about that moment, something modern SUVs can't always recreate. The old HSE models remind you that cars aren't just machines. They're memories, they're moments, they're chapters of our lives. And this SUV, more than almost any luxury SUV of its era, wrote those chapters with elegance and authority. Before I go, make sure you subscribe, hit that button like you're slamming the door of a 2008 HSE, firm, confident, and knowing exactly what you want. And speaking of confidence, if you haven't watched our previous video on the Ferrari F40, stop everything you're doing and go watch it right now. That masterpiece of raw performance and pure analog insanity is already uploaded and waiting for you, and trust me, you don't want to miss the emotion, the history, and the fire that the F40 brings to the Dazzy Cars channel. Go check it out next.